It's 9:04 a.m. on a Tuesday. The downtown office is buzzing with the usual noise of startup chaos, cappuccino machines hissing in the corner, Slack notifications chiming in every direction, and interns scrambling to act busy. The receptionist barely looks up as the glass doors slide open, until she sees her, worn sneakers, a faded hoodie, a canvas bag with the strap nearly tearing. The woman who just walked in looks like she took 2 buses to get here, because she did. And now the whispers start. Is she in the wrong building? Maybe she's a delivery person. I think she's here for an interview. Wait, in that? The receptionist clears her throat, masking judgment with a smile. Hi, are you here for someone? The woman nods. Yes, I'm here for the 10 o'clock. She says it with calm certainty. No nerves, no fidgeting, just a quiet confidence that unsettles people who rely on power suits to prove their worth. The receptionist double-checks the calendar, confusion flickering across her face. She waves her through anyway. As she walks past rows of open-concept desks, more heads turn. Her presence is a glitch in their carefully curated aesthetic. Minimalist desks, designer sneakers, $200 water bottles. She doesn't belong here. Not in their eyes. But here's the thing. She notices every smirk, every eye roll, every fake smile. She also notices the locked cabinet full of unused laptops, the unclean coffee station, the server overheating in the corner. Details, weak spots, lies hiding in plain sight. She walks into the glass-walled conference room and sits down, not at the guest chair but at the head of the table, legs crossed, eyes scanning the room like a security camera, silent, patient, because she's not here to ask for a job. She's here to see what they really are when they think they're the ones in power. And in less than 48 hours, this entire company will be hers. They just don't know it yet. Before she walked into that office, before the whispers and the stares, Janelle was just another kid no one wanted. Born into a storm she didn't cause, her earliest memories weren't of bedtime stories or birthday parties. They were of trash bags filled with her clothes, and strangers calling her a handful before handing her off to the next foster home. By the time she was 13, she had lived in 9 different homes. Some were cold, some were cruel, none were permanent. But through it all, Janelle clung to one constant, the public library. While other kids played video games or begged for iPads, Janelle buried herself in books. At first it was just to stay warm in the winter. But soon it became obsession. Coding manuals, business biographies, math workbooks no one assigned. If it had pages, she devoured it. By 16, she had reverse-engineered a budgeting app that helped her group home survive on food stamps. By 18, she was tutoring college students in calculus, just to afford clean clothes for her GED exam. She didn't have a trust fund, she didn't have a LinkedIn, she didn't even have a last name that opened doors. What she did have? A fire no one could fake. Janelle applied to over 40 internships during her final year in foster care. Every rejection came with the same corporate fluff. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. What they didn't say, but she knew, was that her Gmail address and community college transcript didn't scream tech genius to them. But she wasn't waiting for anyone's permission. By 22, Janelle had built her first software company from a refurbished laptop and a free Wi-Fi signal at a laundromat. She coded until her fingers cramped, she pitched until her voice cracked, and eventually, someone believed in her. At least, she thought they did. Because the next part of her story, the betrayal, would become the turning point. Janelle met Marcus at a pitch competition in downtown Chicago. He had a Stanford hoodie, a charming smile, and a phone full of VC contacts. She had a working demo and 3 hours of sleep. On stage, they were electric. He had the swagger, she had the substance. Off stage, he told her they'd make a perfect team. And for a while, it felt like they did. They worked out of coffee shops and shared Uber rides to networking events they weren't invited to. Janelle coded through the night, while Marcus handled the charm offensive. He spoke fluent investor, schmoozing tech bros and Silicon Valley types who wouldn't have looked twice at Janelle if she'd walked in alone. When they landed their first round of angel funding, it felt like a miracle. But slowly, things started to shift. Marcus insisted on putting the company under his name for now, because it was easier for optics. He started taking meetings without her, brushing it off as strategy. She told herself it was temporary. She trusted him. Until one day, she walked into their shared workspace and everything was gone. Her desk, her files, her code. And Marcus? He had incorporated the business without her, transferred all the IP, rebranded the app, then posted a glowing TechCrunch article about the young visionary from Stanford disrupting the finance world, with not a single mention of her name. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal. He hadn't just stolen her company, he'd stolen the version of her life she had spent years building from nothing. And the worst part? No one questioned it. She was the girl from the foster system with a library card. He was the Ivy League prodigy with clean sneakers and a press-ready smile. Janelle didn't cry. She packed up her bag, left the city, and disappeared. No blog posts, no Twitter threads, no lawsuits. Just silence. Because she had a different plan. Not to take it back, but to build something so big, she'd never need to ask for a seat again. She'd own the whole damn table. For 3 years, Janelle was a ghost. No social media, no industry panels, no trace of the girl who once crashed pitch nights in thrifted blazers. People assumed she quit, burned out, maybe even gave up. Tech blogs stopped mentioning her altogether, if they ever did in the first place. But behind the silence, Janelle was evolving. She moved to a tiny town outside Atlanta, rented a one-bedroom above a mechanic shop, no flashy co-working space, no team, no distractions, just her and her code. She studied the gaps in the industry. Not just the tech, the people. Who got funded, who got excluded, who got tokenized. She mapped out patterns most founders never bothered to see. Patterns she had lived through. While they chased buzzwords, she chased patterns of failure, unethical mergers, inflated valuations, silent buyouts. She learned how the real decisions were made, not in pitch decks, but in closed-door meetings led by men who'd never been told no. Janelle didn't want another app. She wanted infrastructure, power, the kind that didn't wear logos. So she started something nobody saw coming. A silent holding company, no press, no LinkedIn page, just a string of LLCs that began buying up distressed tech assets, companies that had flopped, been canceled, or were teetering after bad leadership. She used her savings, then reinvested every cent of her first wins. No one knew the face behind the acquisitions, and that's exactly how she wanted it. Because revenge isn't loud, it's methodical. By year 2, her company had swallowed 5 startups, including one that used to work with Marcus. She didn't even flinch when she signed the paperwork. By year 3, the tech world started buzzing again. Not about her, but about a mysterious firm buying out mid-sized startups in stealth. And when one of those startups came crawling back to her firm, asking for a merger to save them from collapse, Janelle agreed to meet, in person. No lawyers, no boardrooms, just her, and a job interview. Because the company begging for her help, it was the same one that laughed her out the door 5 years ago, and now, she was ready to walk back in. Not as an applicant, but as the one who decides who stays, and who gets left behind. The building hadn't changed much. Same sleek, pretentious architecture. Same glass walls trying to look innovative. Same overpriced art that screamed, "We're different." While the boardroom stayed painfully the same, Janelle stood outside for a moment, letting the irony sink in. 5 years ago, she sat on a splintering bus seat rehearsing her pitch in a cracked phone screen. She showed up early, wearing the only blazer she owned, clutching a resume no one read. They rejected her before she even spoke. Said she was overqualified but underexperienced. One of the execs didn't even bother to look up from his phone. Another asked if she was with catering. Now, they were on the brink of collapse and begging to be acquired. Her firm, still nameless, still faceless to the public, had sent them a cryptic proposal, a potential merger. No guarantees, but they'd get one chance to pitch to whoever showed up. Janelle made sure it was her. She didn't bring a team. No entourage, no stylists or assistants, just her, dressed down in worn jeans, a hoodie with a faded local college logo, and an old tote bag, the same one she carried when they laughed her out of the building years ago. Every stitch was intentional. She wanted them to assume, to underestimate. The moment she stepped into the lobby, she felt it, the judgment, the confusion, the performative smiles hiding real disgust. "Hi, are you here for the interview?" "Yeah," she replied, something like that. They led her to a waiting room and handed her a clipboard, just like before. The receptionist whispered to someone at the front desk. A junior exec walked past, glanced at her outfit, and smirked. Perfect. She waited, calm, focused, listening. Through the thin glass walls, she could hear snippets of conversations. Nervous talk about deadlines, desperation in someone's voice about saving face before Q4. One name kept coming up, the firm they needed to merge with, the one with the money, the leverage, her firm. She waited until they were ready, then walked into the conference room where 3 executives sat, the same ones from her first rejection. They didn't recognize her. Not yet. The CEO looked annoyed. "Thanks for coming, let's keep this short. We're only moving forward with serious candidates." She smiled, slow and deliberate. "Oh, I plan to keep it very short." And just like that, the trap was set. They didn't hold back. From the second Janelle sat down, the air shifted, smug, performative, patronizing. The CEO barely looked at her. The CFO, a man with a Rolex and too much cologne, leaned back with a smirk like this was some kind of joke. And the head of HR? She didn't even hide her glance at Janelle's shoes before scribbling something on her notepad. "I'm sorry," the CEO said, chuckling under his breath. "We just weren't expecting someone so casual." Janelle didn't flinch. "I like to be comfortable when I evaluate talent." They didn't catch it. HR forced a smile. "That's understandable. We just usually expect our applicants to reflect our brand. Our culture is very forward-facing, very image-conscious. Presentation matters." Of course, Janelle nodded, eyes calm. "Wouldn't want to scare off the investors with a hoodie." The CFO snorted. "Exactly. Though I think our investors would be more concerned with, professionalism, not just comfort." They laughed. At her. Not with her. They made small talk designed to flex, name-dropping conferences, industry partners, board members Janelle had already quietly bought out. They threw in buzzwords like synergy and innovation, trying to bait her into proving she belonged. She didn't. She was there to prove they didn't. They offered her water like she was some intern. They kept asking if she had a resume, even after she said she wasn't applying for a specific role. The CEO even tried to advise her on next steps in the industry, as if he wasn't about to beg for her money in under an hour. But Janelle just smiled and asked questions. Sharp, strategic ones. Who owns your customer data? What's your churn rate since last year's layoffs? How many of your devs are actually in-house? They fumbled. Bluffing, glancing at each other. Unprepared. She asked about the infrastructure. They guessed. She asked about compliance. They deflected. She asked about equity distribution, and the room went cold. It was clear they didn't know the answers, or didn't want her to know them. But she already did, because before she ever walked through those doors, she'd spent months picking this company apart from the inside out. Their debt structure, their lawsuits, their top clients, and how many were thinking about walking. Still, they laughed at her tote bag. Still, they whispered about her sweatshirt the moment she stepped into the hallway for a break. And still, they didn't realize the interview wasn't hers, it was theirs. And she was nearly done. The room was quiet now. No more jokes, no more casual condescension. Just an awkward pause as the executives waited for her to wrap up what they still thought was a pitch. Janelle reached into her worn tote bag and slowly pulled out a sleek black folder. No logos, no branding, just clean lines and cold facts. She placed it on the table, flipped it open, and slid it toward the CEO. "Here's the offer," she said. He blinked. "The offer?" "Yes," she replied calmly. "From the firm you've been trying to meet with for the past 6 months. The one that's been acquiring distressed tech properties under market value." His face paled slightly. He picked up the folder and started flipping through the documents. His posture changed, eyes scanning faster, then slower. The CFO leaned over to read. His forehead creased. The HR director stayed quiet, arms crossed, confused but uncomfortable. "This is from them?" the CEO asked, already knowing the answer. Janelle nodded. "It is." The CFO looked up. "Wait. How do you have this?" She tilted her head. "Because I wrote it." Silence. The kind that drapes over a room like fog. "What?" "I'm the founder and majority owner of the firm," she said simply. "This isn't a job interview. It never was. This was an evaluation. Of you." She let that sit. 3 stunned faces. 3 different shades of regret. The CEO opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. She continued. "I've been watching your company for a while now, ever since you passed on my application 5 years ago. That rejection was the best thing that ever happened to me." She smiled. Not cruelly, not smugly, just with quiet certainty. "Because it taught me that some doors don't need to be knocked on. They need to be taken off the hinges." The CFO shifted in his seat. "We had no idea. If we had known who you were," she cut him off. "You would have treated me differently. It wasn't a question, it was the truth." She let the silence stretch. They squirmed in it. Then she stood up, gently pushing her chair back. "The offer is non-negotiable. 49% acquisition, no executive roles retained. You'll get severance packages. But that's it." HR tried to speak, voice cracking. "This feels personal." Janelle paused, looked her in the eye. "It is." She picked up her bag, folded the empty tote over her arm, and turned toward the door. "Wait," the CEO called out, panic rising. "Can we talk about this?" She stopped, looked back one last time. "You already did." And then she left the room. Power doesn't always kick the door down. Sometimes it walks in wearing the very thing you mocked, and leaves with your entire company in its pocket. The second Janelle walked out, the room collapsed into chaos. The CEO tossed the folder onto the table like it had burned his hands. "Is this real? Is this even legal?" he barked, eyes darting around for someone, anyone, to blame. The CFO was already on his phone, scrolling, typing, frantically trying to find a name or a connection he could call for backup. "How the hell did we not know? She was in the building and we didn't even recognize her." HR looked pale. "We mocked her outfit. Oh my God. We mocked the woman acquiring us." "Stop talking," the CEO snapped, but it was too late. The damage wasn't just done, it was irreversible. Because now the truth was spreading. Interns who'd laughed at Janelle earlier watched her walk past the front desk like she owned the place, and realized, too late, that she literally did. One of the junior devs, overhearing the executive meltdown, whispered something to the marketing team. Within 10 minutes, Slack was flooded with panicked messages, confused updates, and stunned silence. The merger wasn't a rumor anymore. It was reality. And the woman they dismissed, underestimated, and belittled? She had been playing chess while they were still handing out checkers. The CFO slammed his laptop shut. "We need damage control. Call legal, call per. We'll spin this. Say it was a misunderstanding." But the CEO wasn't listening. He was staring out the window, shell-shocked. His jaw tightened. "She baited us." No one answered, because deep down they all knew she didn't bait them. They played themselves. They judged her the moment she walked through that door, decided who she was before she even spoke. All based on a hoodie and a tote bag. But while they were too busy measuring worth by fabric and labels, Janelle had been measuring their vulnerabilities, their egos, their blind spots, and she had found all of them. HR tried to backpedal. "Maybe we can reach out, apologize, ask her to reconsider keeping some of the team." "No," the CEO muttered. "We're done. You don't come back from this." Meanwhile, in a different office not too far away, Janelle sat across from her lawyer, calm, composed. She sipped coffee while scanning the acquisition paperwork one last time. Every clause was locked in, every asset accounted for, no press release, no announcement. She didn't need applause. She had something better: silence, the kind that speaks louder than any headline. Because she hadn't just won, she had exposed them. And soon, everyone else would see what happens when power changes hands, and looks nothing like what they expected. It wasn't just about one office, one company, or one bad decision. What happened that day was a mirror, a reflection of a bigger, uglier truth that plays out in boardrooms, interviews, and classrooms every single day. And Janelle knew it. They didn't lose everything because she was brilliant. They lost everything because they assumed she couldn't be. They looked at her hoodie and saw unprofessional. They looked at her skin and saw diversity hire. They looked at her silence and mistook it for weakness, and in doing so, they revealed themselves. That was the real evaluation. Because when people think they're in power, when they think you need them, they get comfortable. They show you who they really are, they laugh a little louder, they speak a little more carelessly, and they assume they're untouchable, because the system has always been tilted in their favor. But Janelle had seen that system from the inside out. She'd seen how it ignored people who didn't look the part, how it flattened brilliance into stereotypes, how it celebrated grit in stories, but punished it in real life when it walked into an interview with worn shoes. She wasn't just buying a company, she was exposing a cycle. This was about every woman who's ever been told to dress up more just to be taken seriously. Every black girl whose ideas were stolen in a meeting, then repeated by a man with more confidence and less talent. Every working-class genius who was turned away at the door because her outfit didn't match their brand. Janelle didn't scream it, she didn't tweet about it. She showed it. She let their own bias sink them. And that's why the story mattered. Not because it was satisfying, though it was, but because it peeled back the curtain on how many brilliant minds we overlook every single day, simply because they don't fit someone else's idea of success. She gave them a chance. She let them talk. She gave them rope. And they hung their own legacy with it. Now their names were gone from the masthead. Their offices cleared out. Their LinkedIn profiles mysteriously open to work, and the woman they dismissed as just another unprepared interviewee, she was rebuilding the company in her own image. Diverse, inclusive, future-proof. No glass walls, no hidden rules, just talent and vision. Because she wasn't the exception. She was the result of everything they refused to see. Janelle didn't celebrate. No champagne, no viral tweet, no dramatic monologue in the boardroom. She simply returned to the same one-bedroom apartment above the mechanic shop, the one that still smelled like motor oil and determination. She opened her laptop, reviewed the final wire transfers, and sent out a memo to the remaining staff. Not a threat, not a flex, just a quiet outline of what was coming next. A new leadership model. Transparent pay, inclusive hiring. A company culture built around earning people's trust, not controlling them. Then she shut her laptop and walked to the kitchen. She still didn't own much. No flashy car, no designer wardrobe, just a drawer full of notebooks and a closet full of hoodies. The same ones that made people look down on her before they even heard her speak. And yet, she had built something no one could take from her, not this time, not ever again. Somewhere across the city, the men who once sat across from her were clearing out their desks, whispering about NDAs, calling lawyers, Googling how to bounce back from public disgrace. But she didn't need to see any of that, because this was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming the narrative. They thought she came from nothing. But what they didn't understand, what they never understand, is that when you grow up having to fight for every inch, you learn how to see the whole battlefield. You learn how to move in silence, how to make every rejection a redirection, how to become so undeniable, they don't even realize you've already won until you're signing the final check. Janelle didn't need to remind them who she was. They'd remember her now. She walked outside into the early evening air, pulled up her hood, and melted into the crowd. No one stopped her. No one pointed. She was just another face on the street. And that's exactly how she liked it. Because real power doesn't need validation. It just moves, intentionally, quietly, and without apology. And sometimes, it wears poor people clothes to the biggest meeting of its life, just to remind the world what it really missed out on. How many brilliant women have been silenced because they didn't look the part? How many ideas have been stolen? How many legacies erased because someone in power couldn't see past a hoodie or an accent or a last name? Maybe it's time we stop asking women to prove themselves and start asking the system why it only believes certain people in the first place. If this story moved you, share it, comment below, and ask yourself, would you have underestimated her too?